How's everyone doing today? Good? Good. Hopefully you'll be doing better after this session, if we do our jobs. All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Blake Markham. I'm the Senior Product Manager here at Salesforce.com. This is Ready to Rock Your Productivity. Meet the new Salesforce CRM for Outlook. We're very excited to be here today. I also have Sean Weedage from Rackspace Hosting with me. He's going to be talking to you about some of their experiences with Outlook integration. Before we get started, a word from our sponsors. I'm sure you guys have already seen this a few times today, and you'll continue to see it. By the end of the week, you'll probably know it word for word. If you want to read more about this, you can see our investor site on our website. So why are we here? Right? We're here because you manage customer data in two worlds. And that's hard, right? How many of you think that's hard? Okay, good. It's tedious, right? So you're spending a lot of time bouncing back and forth between these applications, and you're spending a lot of time copying and pasting data, potentially dealing with accessing data in one system when you really need data from the other system. It's just painful, right? And we think that this challenge boils down to kind of two key areas. The first is that your critical customer emails are missing from CRM, right? They're in Outlook. Outlook is where you spend your day sending and receiving emails with your customers, with your prospects. And there's a lot of rich information there. There's prospect data. There's updated contact information. Here's my latest cell phone number. There's requests for quotes. There's new orders. There's customer issues, right? There's a lot of really important customer information. But that's not in Salesforce CRM, right? And so without it being in Salesforce CRM, you don't have a 360-degree view of your customer that we talk about being so important to CRM and to Salesforce.com. On the other hand, there's all that great CRM data in Salesforce, right? But you can't access that from Outlook. There's simple things like your calendar, your contacts, your tasks. But there's other information too, right? Wouldn't it be great to know about recent opportunities related to an email that you're looking at, the latest contact information, potentially case information. There's a lot of really important information that's in CRM that is really hard to get into Outlook. And ultimately, you end up wasting a lot of time, right? You're spending a lot of time bouncing back and forth. It's tedious. You're bouncing between applications. And ultimately, you're not productive. So if you look at how you can solve this problem today, there's really kind of two ways to bridge the gap. The first is, kind of go it alone, brute force, right? Some of the things I touched on earlier, alt-tabbing, copying, pasting, manual data entry. But this leads to a lot of problems, right? Duplicated data, inaccurate data, or no data. Like that's the worst scenario. The other approach is to use an Outlook integration product. But Outlook integration products historically haven't been that easy to use. Too many clicks to get the data where you want it to go. Sync can oftentimes be disruptive, slow you down, keep you from doing what you need to do, or even provide you with too much data, right? Inundate you with too much data, which is also bad. And also you can be quite distracted with configuring the product. So you get the product, you're spending more time kind of turning dials and flipping levers and not actually getting your work done. We think there's a better way, right? So our vision for Outlook integration really rests on kind of three key themes. The first is really simple email logging. So you saw in the keynote this morning, George Hu touched on the concept of clicking on an add email button and the email going into Salesforce. This is what we mean by making email really simple to get into Salesforce.com. And by doing that, you get a really a complete view of your customer, a single view of the customer, which is so critical to CRM. The second is set it and forget it synchronization. So you don't think about whether your BlackBerry is in sync, right? It just is. And why can't CRM and Outlook synchronization be as easy? Right? It should be just as easy. You shouldn't have to think about whether you've got the latest data in Outlook or you've got the latest data in CRM. It should just be in sync. And finally, you're touching on some of the configuration challenges that I know many of you have experienced. Administration in the cloud is kind of the third really important area that we think is critical to making you successful with Outlook integration. And this means that by moving administration into the cloud, you don't have to do anything on the local desktop to get it configured. And you don't have to burden with your users with having to configure the application. We think that's really critical and makes for a very successful deployment. So that's why today, George stole a little bit of our thunder, but we're really pleased to introduce Salesforce CRM for Outlook. It's a totally, from the ground up, re-architected solution to make you successful in integrating with Outlook. And it does that in 3 ways. The first is adding emails to salesforce.com with a single click. And I'll show you that. I mean literally a single click to get an email into salesforce.com. Second is syncing contacts and calendar without interrupting your work. So no progress bars coming up, no pop-ups, no slowing down Outlook, just synchronizing your data the way you want it, the right data, no interruptions. And finally, administration in the cloud means your users really don't have to worry with configuration. So I promise I'm going to show you more of this, but before I do that, I'd like you to hear directly from one of our customers who's been through some of these challenges with email integration, knows how bad email integration can be, and is really looking to Salesforce CRM for Outlook to solve a lot of their problems and has been successful in piloting this feature. And with that, I'd like to ask you to give a warm welcome to Sean Weedage. He's the VP of Technical Sales Operations for Rackspace Hosting.
Hey, thank you, Blake, and welcome everyone. Appreciate the outstanding attendance today. So as Blake mentioned, I do work for Rackspace Hosting. We're one of the world's leaders in managed and cloud computing services. One of our various product portfolios is email hosting. We currently host about 1.2 million email accounts, so we have a pretty good feel for the importance of email as it pertains to the business community at large. I've had the distinct privilege of being able to participate in 3 different CRM solutions while at Rackspace. And each one of them thought that email was important, but handled it in very different ways. We had two previous CRM deployments before we finally settled on Salesforce.com in 2007, and currently have that rolled out to about 750 users across our organization. We do have an extremely high reliance on email because of the nature of our business. We have 60,000 customers worldwide, businesses that we serve around the globe. So email is extremely important to us. So it's critical. I mentioned we're an email-centric company, 90-plus countries. The benefit of email is still that many people understand it. It's very easy to send. It's always on your hip and allows you to work at the pace with which you're comfortable, right? So the customer who's speaking to us from Hong Kong and working with our US or EMEA-based sales teams or support organization, customer management organization, it allows them to communicate on a pace that is suitable for them. It's utilized at every point in our customer life cycle. So our initial greeting that email is often to our customers, often through email, marketing campaigns, our initial introductions, cold calling, cold emailing, all the way up to the customer management, the management of the customer's life cycle. Each one of those interactions has the potential to contain some very important data that, with a company that's grown as quickly as Rackspace and as often as we've had movement among our account management teams, it's important that we have that continuity of those communications available to our incoming teams. All right? So staying in sync is also very important to us. As we've grown, we've become more field-oriented. So everyone has a mobile device of some sort on their hip, generates more emails and more needs to be able to have that information available to them very quickly and at their fingertips, and in a way that's not too cumbersome and not convoluted by a lot of extraneous type of emails or data in there that's non-value added. Need absolutely the right customer data. And the most important part I think of the whole thing is that you cannot burden the reps with trying to make this work. I'll kind of go through a couple of our experiences that we had here in just a second, but the critical piece, if you want your reps to be able to use this and capture this information, is the application has to perform in real time and be intelligent enough to match up the emails with the people to which they're intended. So a little bit about the history. Our first CRM implementation was back in the 2001 timeframe. It was a product that had a very different approach. It actually had an integrated mail solution. While this might seem ideal at first, it really had a lot of pitfalls. One was that it did a poor job of storing attachments. It didn't have a lot of the rich functionality that Outlook had. It was a proprietary client, so there was a pretty steep learning curve. And then emails, for one reason or another, would somehow even then manage to get missed because of the way it was storing them in the database. Okay. So about the 2003 timeframe, we converted to another CRM solution. This was a typical CRM solution that had an integration to Outlook. The challenges we saw here was that this was extremely cumbersome for our end users. It was also extremely cumbersome for our administrators. In this particular solution, we had to go desktop by desktop and install the client, configure the client, and then had to go inside of Outlook and make additional changes to rules and other items in order to try and get emails over into the CRM system. What often happened is the emails would just disappear. We'd never see them again. We would hope they would attach, but they kind of just went off into the ether. I see a lot of people shaking their heads, having experienced that before themselves. So the next CRM, obviously, was Salesforce.com, and the one that we all know and love, along with the Salesforce Connect for Outlook current iteration. It's not usually good to talk negatively about the current product that's out there, but based on the applause that we saw this morning, I think people have had their share of frustrations around this application. The feedback I get from my end users is that it's cumbersome, right? There's a lot of clicks in order to be able to associate the data that you need. The other big feedback is that it's not as responsive as the end user would like. We get a lot of end users that are frustrated and potentially end up just disabling the functionality, which means we lose a lot of those communications that we would normally have with those customers and would like to be able to refer to in the future. The final piece is the feedback I get from my Salesforce administrator, in that it can be very cumbersome because of the decentralized nature of the management. So you do have to go out and do configuration installation at each of the desktops, which takes more time away from their core function, which is continuing to evolve the application internally. All right. So as far as lessons learned, before I let Blake get on to the demonstration, if I had known back when we were doing the evaluations of other vendors of what I would know now, I would have given serious consideration and spent more time looking at how the email was handled. I don't think there's anybody out there yet that's gotten it right, but I'm very hopeful from what we've seen of the beta release of this solution that Salesforce is definitely on the right track. And the roadmap is, from what you saw this morning, is extremely encouraging. And what you'll see here in a moment, I think you'll be very happy with. The email integration needs to be easy and not feel different from the tools that your reps are accustomed to using now. So if the simpler and better integrated it is with Outlook, the more use you're going to get out of that from your teams. And that managing the configuration of your users is critical. If you have got emails that are being randomly attached to leads, to contacts at the company level, it makes for a very disjointed process when you do need to go back and retrieve that information. So with the new Outlook client, it really solves that because of the centralized administration. And the last thing is just make sure you're training the teams on how to use the product. It is very easy. The team has put a lot of effort into making this as simplistic as possible, but it is still good to go back and reinforce how important it is to make sure you're getting the right emails in the right way and not cluttering up the system with just every email. In the past, I saw a user try importing a 2 gig PST file into one of our previous CRM solutions. Really was not good for that system. Finally, I would talk a little bit about the value that we're getting out of this, right? So we can talk about all the emails and everything, but ultimately, the ease of configuration deployment allows my administrators to really focus on their core work. Meanwhile, because this is easy to use for the sales teams, we're getting a higher retention of those customer interactions. So as we have transitions of customer account basis from one sales rep to another, it's great to be able to go back and see exactly what that customer's thinking without someone going and typing in notes or trying to summarize the customer's thoughts. You can go back, reconstruct the history of interactions, be they good or bad, but have a full view of what's been occurring to the customer and what they brought to us. And then ultimately, that leads to a better customer experience. The more that your sales teams and your account management teams know about the customer, the better experience they're going to have for you. All right? So with that, Blake?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
So I want to do a demonstration of Salesforce CRM for Outlook, but first I want to ask how many people in the room are currently using Connect for Outlook? Wow. Okay, great. So maybe you don't want to see this, but I want to remind you. I want to just remind you of what's involved in adding email and synchronization, right? To level set, kind of where we are today and where we're going to go, right? So, in this example, I've selected an email to be added. I'm searching for the person to relate it to. I'm searching for the item to relate it to, right? And if I find those things, then I'm adding it to Salesforce, and that's a lot of clicks, right? Syncing with Salesforce, similarly, can also be a lot of clicks. If I want to create a new contact, enter that contact information, I need to mark it for sync. Then I need to associate it, right? And then I sync. And sync can be disruptive because we have this progress bar, right? So there's a lot that we recognize that you're doing, that you're spending time doing, that is not what you want to be spending time doing, which is selling and doing your job, right? And when you're synchronizing, not only, as I mentioned this before, but it can be disruptive, but it can also just be the wrong data or too much data, and just frankly not add enough value to your day, right? And ultimately, it's kind of too much to deal with, right? I'm sure some of you feel like this at times, and we recognize that we've heard from you that there's an enormous opportunity here to really make you more productive. And so now I want to show you how we plan to do that. So the first thing I want to do is show you how email integration works. So, well, first of all, let me take a step back and tell you about the fact that after I've installed the application, you'll see I get a new icon here in the system tray. So this is where Salesforce CRM for Outlook actually lives. It's running outside of Outlook in the system tray. That's kind of small to see, but actually it's really not important, because by the end of this, you'll see that you really don't care that that's there. You just care that it's doing the work that you want it to. So in this demo, Madison Rigsby of Universal Telco, she's installed this application. She's signed in, and she's off and running. She didn't have to do anything. Her administrator configured everything for her. She just signed in. She's ready to go. So Madison's been working with a prospect. She actually recently sent them a quote, a woman by the name of Christina Will, and she's expecting an email back from Christina. And it's her lucky day. She's heard back from Christina. And Christina says, this quote's approved. We're looking forward to get started. And so Madison wants to add this into Salesforce and tie it to Christina's contact record, as well as to the opportunity that she's working on. And she also is going to want to capture some information later. We'll start out and say, thanks, Christina. And Madison clicks send an ad. That's it. It's in Salesforce. Do you believe me? No? Okay. So here's Christina Will's contact. Here's the quote we discussed, 3:46 p.m. Additionally, if I go to the opportunity, since Christina is also a contact on that opportunity, we also have the email on the activity history on the opportunity. So this is what we mean by really simple email integration. Super simple. Thank you. Now, we all know that this is a demo, all the data was in the right place, things don't always go as smoothly as you would hope. So what about the fact or the scenario where the contact's not in the system, right? Or we can't find the contact, or we can't find the record. So, Madison also heard from another person, Larry Jobs, somebody she met at a trade show. Looks like he might be a good lead. She wants to get him into the system. So you'll see there's another button up here. She can do it from within the record itself or from the main toolbar here. So she's going to click Add Email. She gets a nice confirmation that it's been sent to Salesforce. And you'll see on the home page she's been assigned a task for the unresolved email. So reminding her to take action to go in and deal with this. So in this case, maybe she goes in and creates a lead for Larry, or depending on how far along she thinks the conversation might be, sets up an account and a contact. We leave that up to her. But the point is that she's able to capture the information at the time that she needs to without losing the information, without having to go through quick create or any other steps, right? So really simple email integration to send and add emails in one step, as well as to add existing emails that you've sent or received. So that's email integration. The next thing I want to show you is synchronization. So the first thing I want to point out is that Madison is syncing her contacts, and she's only getting the contacts that she wants. So what I mean by this is you'll see in Outlook, she's got two contacts here, Christina, the prospect she was just working with, and another contact, Howard Jones. Both of these contacts are in New York City. If you go into Salesforce and look in the contact view, under all contacts, you'll see there's a lot more that Madison actually owns or can see, right? And so the reason that she's only getting these particular contacts is because her administrator has set up filters for her to get the data that she wants. Right? And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. But I wanted to point out that she's only getting the data that she's most interested in based on her job function and her role. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just show you simple updates, right? So what does it look like for data to flow back and forth? So let's go and look at our calendar. So you'll see Madison has Dreamforce on her calendar. She's got the keynote, lunch. She's got this session. That's strange. And if you go into Salesforce, you'll see that there's the same information on her calendar. We can go to the week view. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just do a quick update to her calendar. So let's say, during the conference she met someone she wants to go meet in the expo and learn more about an offering that they might have. So I'm just going to add an appointment for go to expo to meet with vendor. Oops. Okay. And also, I'm going to set up some time on my calendar, on her calendar for tomorrow to do some follow-ups and maybe follow up with Larry, the lead that she heard from. And then I seem to remember that Christina provided some information, a couple pieces of information. One, her cell phone has changed. So let's go ahead and fix that for Christina. And then finally, it looks like Christina is kind of bringing someone else that's going to be involved in the deal. We don't know exactly what he does yet, Jeff Irving, but she's going to be working with him. So we want to go ahead and capture him as a contact just quickly, so we have him in the system. Okay, so the way synchronization works is it happens in the background automatically every 10 minutes. You don't have to do anything. Instead of having us sit here and twiddle our thumbs, I'm going to go ahead and nudge it so you can also manually sync whenever you want. So I'm just going to go down here and say sync. So you see we get a quick little animation. Synchronization happened. That was it. Right? Normally that would happen in the background. You won't even think about it. So what just happened? Well, we should have a couple new appointments on our calendar, right, for today and for tomorrow. We should have an updated phone number for Christina Will. And what about Jeff? Right, we added Jeff. I didn't say what account he worked for. I just entered his company name. So let's see what happened with synchronization. So we'll go in. First thing is we'll refresh the calendar. So you'll see, go to Expo to meet with vendor, 5 o'clock, and then the follow-up with leads appointment is there. So that's great. And if I go to Christina's contact, you'll see that she has the latest phone number just updated. And also, if we go to Grand Hotels, we'll also see that guy, Jeff Irving, is automatically on Grand Hotels. I didn't have to do anything to associate that because we were able to match by his account name. So that's synchronization. I mentioned that you also have the ability to filter data, and that's why Madison is able to get the data that she cares about most. So I'm going to go into setup. And for Madison, she can view her configuration at any time. She can actually get to it from the system tray itself if she wants to jump in and see what she's been configured for, or she can do it here. And this is just a really simple snapshot of what she's been configured to do. You'll see here that we show what exactly is going on. She's been activated for ad email. She can adjust her preferences for ad email. We can see that she's syncing contacts and events in what directions. If you roll over here or hover over this filter, you can see that the reason she's only seeing those 2 contacts is because this is a bit of a contrived example, but you get the idea. She's got she's only syncing contacts with a zip code starting with 1,000, right? So that's why she's only getting the data in Outlook that she is. Additionally, she can see field mappings if she's curious how data is actually mapping, but we don't put that in front of her unless she really is interested in learning about that. So that's the administration functionality from an end user perspective. Now, to put on my administrator hat for a second, just to give you a sense of how you would deploy this thing, you go into Outlook configurations under desktop administration, and this is where all the configuration for the Salesforce CRM for Outlook product is controlled. So if you're familiar with mobile, how many of you use the Salesforce mobile product? Okay, good. So this shouldn't look too unfamiliar. There's a concept of a configuration, and within that configuration, there's the ability to set up and assign users and profiles to the configuration, as well as define settings that are specific to the way Outlook should behave with respect to sync direction, conflict behavior, field mappings. Mapping fields is as simple as picking values from a pick list. We support custom fields both in Salesforce and Outlook. Additionally, and most importantly, I think, is in addition to controlling the settings for how it should behave, there's also the ability to control what you should get, right? So I'll go back and show you the dataset editor, which is a bit different if you're familiar with the mobile product. We were inspired by that product, but we tried to make it simpler and make it even easier to set up for, especially because the scope of syncing with Outlook is a bit different. So in this scenario, you can see that this configuration, how easy it was for the administrator to go in and say, for the users of this configuration, I want to select set of contacts. I want records they own, records on opportunities they own, and I want to add some field filters. Really, really simple, right? And as soon as you save this configuration, the configuration is available to be retrieved from any client that's installed, so the user can just download it and install it. Or if you have a more rigorous approach to deploying software and you need to push it out to the user, we provide an MSI file. You can push it out to the desktops. And then as soon as that user logs in, they get the configuration. They don't have to do anything, and you don't have to push any configuration files. So deploying this product is much, much easier. And we hope this really enables your organizations to be successful with Salesforce CRM for Outlook. The last thing I wanted to show you was just a couple other synchronization scenarios, like adding an additional contact to Grand Hotels. So now that you've seen the administration functionality, you can see that adding a new contact to a particular account, save that, you would expect, since that's within the data set that we talked about, as soon as I sync it, there he is. Right, so super, super simple synchronization, and we hope you're really excited by the direction that we're taking for the new Salesforce CRM for Outlook. So now I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the roadmap and what we plan to do with the product going forward. There's, I think, 4 key areas that will continue, the 3 existing areas that I've talked about we'll continue to innovate on, and then kind of a new concept. So email logging, single click is a good step in the right direction, but we think that there's a place for also zero effort email logging, so an automated way to log email. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Sync improvements, so adding more intelligence to deal with associations and matching. Administration in the cloud, so obviously as we continue to add more features to the product, we'll need to continue to add more controls to the administration functionality so that it's even easier to manage and roll out. And finally, the power of CRM and Outlook. So there's a lot of really rich information that we talked about before that's in CRM that you don't get in Outlook beyond just contacts, tasks, and events. And so I want to talk a bit about that. First, zero effort email logging. So this is the idea that we're looking at a way to add the ability to log all of your emails to Salesforce.com from Outlook. obviously, as Sean mentioned, there's a time and a place for the right kinds of emails, but giving people the ability to send all their emails into Salesforce and use intelligence on the server to determine where those emails should be logged to, which ones should be ignored, and make it easy for the user to take action when necessary. So in this example, we're showing some messages, conversations that had been that basically couldn't be linked to a CRM record, and giving the user a really easy way to run through, make decisions, and then the system learns from those user decisions. So we think this is the next step in the evolution of logging email. And also, the most important thing, I think, to managing email is logging emails as emails, right? So we log emails today as activities, and that works pretty well, except it can be a little confusing for users who are new to the system. And part of this effort to improve email logging is also to make it really, really easy to represent and look at email in the way that you would expect. So a view, a related list similar to the way you would look at your email, the concept of an attachment within an email, common concepts that you're used to using within email. This functionality will be including that. Sync intelligence. So I showed you a little bit about how a contact was automatically associated. And I added a new contact from Outlook, provided a company name. It automatically linked that contact to the company. So there's automatic matching going on in the background to match contacts to existing contacts. We'll be adding functionality to do the same with events and tasks. Preferences for handling multiple matches. So what do you do if you find two contacts? How do you deal with that? Right, so giving you the ability to choose a preference, like use the one with the most recent activity, or use the oldest one, the first one essentially in the system. And then what about the scenario where a contact, you can't find the account, right? You've entered an account name, maybe you've misspelled it, or maybe the account just isn't in the system. What do we do with that? Well, we don't want to put the burden back on the user or on the client, right? That's what we want to move away from. So this is an example of an association queue. We're calling it the Outlook queue, where you will go in Salesforce to figure out what to do with records that we basically need your input on, right? And so giving you the ability to very quickly run through, based on a given company that you provided, we can make suggestions about what account it should be connected to, right? And give you a really quick way to make that decision and make that link. And this way you can do it when you have time to do it. You don't need to do it one by one by one by one from within Outlook. So also, we know that we need to provide a deeper level of sync functionality. So we talked a lot at the high level about about contacts, tasks, and events, but there's some subtleties within each of those objects that we're working on improving. So for example, if you're using our person account functionality, if you're a B2I business model where you're modeling individuals as person accounts, we're working on the ability for you to sync those bidirectionally so that you can create a contact in Outlook and sync it into Salesforce and create a person account, or create a person account in Salesforce and have it show up as a contact in Outlook. For events, there's a lot to be done with events, adding reminder time functionality, adding all-day, multi-day, and recurring event sync support. So today we sync recurring events, but we split them up into individual events, which works pretty well, but we know that we need to properly support the new recurring event model that was introduced a year back or so. And then event attendees, currently today when you synchronize an event from Outlook to Salesforce, or vice versa, you don't get the actual attendee information populated on the record in Outlook, right? And so synchronizing event attendees, we think, is really important for you to truly be able to stop that alt-tab behavior that you have to do to go back and forth to get information. So you're looking at an event, and you need to know who was invited to it if it started in Salesforce or vice versa. And we mentioned the cloud scheduling functionality that's coming, the cloud scheduler in the keynote today, right? And so as you're scheduling these meetings, it's going to be really, really important that you have a complete view of that meeting, regardless of which system you're looking at it in. And finally, Task Sync. We'll be adding Task Sync to this new product. Currently, it just supports Contact Sync and Event Sync. We'll be adding Task Sync as well as recurring Task Sync. For administration in the cloud, I showed you a quick demonstration of how this works, so I won't spend too much time on this, but basically just to reiterate that you can define all your sync settings in your data sets and assign them to users and profiles without, you don't have to have any technical knowledge. You can do it right from setup. For the user view, I also showed you that, the ability for the user to be able to view their configuration within setup, and also we're working on the ability for you to be able to customize the settings. So as an administrator, you could say to your end users, I'm going to define how you synchronize contacts and events, but I'm actually going to let you decide how to choose to deal with conflicts, right, based on your work style, based on which system you spend more time in. So we'll be adding the ability to edit these settings based on the permissions that you've been granted from the administrator to basically customize to make it work for you. So what's next? So once we get email working really smoothly, and we get synchronization working really smoothly, and we've got administration doing exactly what you needed to do so you can deploy this thing to a large organization, to a lot of different users with different requirements, what is next? And we think the next thing is bringing the power of CRM in Outlook. So the way we see this working is that when you're looking at emails, it should be really easy for you to get key CRM data presented to you in the context of that email that you're looking at, or the calendar that you're looking at. So in this example, our friendly sales rep, Madison, is hearing back from a prospect that she hasn't heard from in a long time. What does Madison need in that moment? What does she need to be able to handle that request as effectively as possible? Right? So she needs to know as much information as she can about who Tim is, who Grand Hotels is. If it's been a while, she might not remember all the details. She might not remember what the last item is that she worked on with him. But also, she may need to know about other things like, does he have an open case? Are there open issues that I need to know about before I respond to this person to make sure that I take care of the customer as effectively as possible? And finally, the ability to, as I said before, view this similar kind of information both in the email but also in the context of your calendar. So if I'm looking at an event on my calendar, present me with information that's relevant and of interest to me based on the person the person the event's assigned to. So that's the power of CRM and Outlook. So if there's just a couple things you remember from our session today, I want to make sure that you understand that we're listening. So we know that there's a lot to be done in this area, and we know that we have a lot more to do. But I really hope that from what you've seen, you can see that we're taking a step in the right direction. We have a lot of people thinking about this, and it's really important to us that you're successful with Salesforce CRM and Outlook. The three key things that we're providing: simple email logging, set it and forget it synchronization, administration in the cloud, and of course, there's much, much, much more on the way. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. You can ask. There's a microphone there. If you can step up to the microphone, that'd be great. Otherwise, I can try and hear your question and repeat it. Also, Sean, I'll ask Sean to come up if anyone wants to ask Sean questions as well about Rackspace hosting.
What do you've shown us is currently available, and what's the timeline on the rest of it?
So the product today is currently available as a pilot there's customers like Rackspace Hosting that are piloting it today in the winter release. We'll be adding additional pilot availability in the next release. So if you're interested in piloting this in the next release, talk to your account executive, talk to your customer success manager, talk to support, and we'll try and get you into the pilot. We're looking to make the product generally available. We're targeting the summer time frame to make it generally available. Yes? So the Outlook client is only necessary. I mean, if you want to add an email from your mobile device, then you could use something like email to Salesforce, where you could have your email to Salesforce address and copy that address. But this client is just running on the desktop. So it's just providing functionality on the desktop. So if you're applying on their mobile, That's right. But you could add, to clarify that, so you could add you can always add existing messages that are in your inbox or in your sent mail. You can go in and click Add Email, and we'll send it to Salesforce, but it won't be automatic.
I think the Outlook 2010 beta was released today, and I was just curious, is this product being designed natively to support Outlook 2010? And given that it's not going to imminently be released, is there a plan to do a maintenance upgrade to the Outlook connector to make it support 2010 in the interim?
So we're currently looking at what would be involved in supporting both. Thank you for your question. We're currently looking at what's involved to support both Windows 7 as well as the latest suite of Office. I can't tell you yet if we're going to be able to support the latest version of Office on the old product, but absolutely going forward we'll support the latest versions of Windows and Office on the new product. Yeah.
Will the funneling of the contacts be able to work with territory management so that you can filter by territory?
It's not something that we currently have planned, but it's something that we certainly can look into. The hope is that by being able to key off of so much information, we're also adding custom object filtering ability. The hope is that that will not totally replace the need to integrate with territory management, but we think that there may be enough information there for you to be able to define your data sets. So it's something we can look into. And if it's something that you want to speak with me afterwards, I'll be around afterwards. I can give you my business card.
When you demoed sending the email from Christina Wills and it attached to the opportunity based on the fact that she was a customer role on that opportunity, what if Christina was a contact role on 6 opportunities? How would you pick the right one?
It would only add it to the open opportunity.
What if they're all open?
It would add it to all of them.
So is there going to be any way to kind of configure that and make some rules around that?
Yeah, so
hopefully?
part of the email logging functionality that I talked about, we recognize that this is just the first step. We're using the email to Salesforce functionality it was actually originally built for our Gmail integration. So the first step is to make it really easy to get all the emails into the system, and then add additional preferences, like I said, about what the right record is to tie it to. Remember the decisions that you make. Good question.
Yeah, with regard to, syncing with the right contact, do you have a choice of maybe just first just matching the email address? Because usually that's unique. If you could have 2, 3, 10 John Smiths, but they all have different email addresses, right? At the same company.
So matching to the first one, you said?
You sync by the email address as opposed to the name and company, which is what I think you said during your presentation. Is that an option?
So, I'm sorry, I'm not.
So if you're syncing a contact,
right,
and if you're trying to match from Outlook to Salesforce, you look at the person's name, you look at the company that they work for, and their email address. It seems like the email address would be the most unique thing of those 3.
So we actually match on the email address, and we'll be adding additional matching functionality. Okay, we're matching solely on email address.
And will you also, if the person doesn't exist as a contact, but they do exist as a lead, will it go to the lead instead?
No, we're not synchronizing leads to synchronizing contacts as leads.
Okay.
That's not something we've heard a lot about, but I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, I think, well, from a prospecting perspective, that could be useful. Well, just sorry, last question.
Sure.
When you talk about the calendar, the cloud scheduling thing that they showed at the keynote,
right?
Are there plans to get that to somehow be integratable with the Exchange Server calendar? Because there are a lot of users within a company who are not Salesforce users, but they're Outlook Exchange users, and you want to be able to put them on meetings and things like that, and they just won't show up in Salesforce.
That's right. So initially, no, there are not plans to integrate directly with Exchange, but it's something that we're looking at. I mean, I think the first step for integration is to get your events syncing completely as they are with all the attendees between Outlook and Salesforce.com, and push as much of the functionality and much of the logic into the cloud as possible with matching, with associations, with remembering decisions that you make, once we've done that, then taking that technology and extending it to other systems like Google and like Exchange. But for right now, we're focusing primarily on Outlook. Thank you.
So this is a similar question that you've had already, but try to get some more info in it in terms of matching which record. So right now, for me, I'm an account manager, and I actually, whenever I'm adding an email through Connect for Outlook, I'm adding it to a custom object. So that contact is also under the account tab. So if I was using these new features, would it just add it to the account, and I would have to manually go in and change which record it's associated with?
It would just add it only to the contact. So it's just contacts, leads, and opportunities for right now. And then,
So, okay, so it's not relating it to anything else. It's just putting it underneath the contact activity history?
that's right. But the activity history rolls up to the account level, right?
Right.
Within Salesforce. And then we'll be looking at adding additional functionality to support custom objects.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Will the existing Outlook integration still exist? Will it be an option to continue to use
Oh,
that?
yes. So, I mean, eventually the intention is for this product to completely replace that product, but obviously we have a ways to go before we can do that. So, once we make this product generally available, then, there'll be some kind of timeline that we look at to when we feel like we can offer just as much functionality, if not more, in the new product, and put the old product on the schedule.
I assume then it won't switch until it's at least meeting the same needs that it has today.
That's right. So, we know that synchronizing, we feel like we're going to very quickly get much better calendar synchronization. Obviously, we have some work to do with email, dealing with custom objects, dealing with some of the nuances of making associations correct. But, I think we'll get there, and then we'll put the old product on a timeline and stop supporting it. But it's a ways out.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. This replication model is going to greatly enhance the compliance that we have challenges with our field sales forces. Question.
I should ask the people, the team that's been working on this product, if anyone's here, I apologize I didn't do this sooner, but if you're here and you've been working on Salesforce CRM Outlook, please stand up, because
thank you.
You guys have done, come on, stand up. It's just two guys. No, there's three. And there's people over there, okay.
As a sales manager,
I'm kind of blinded up here.
As a sales manager, you take away a lot of my headaches. The next question statement I want to make is, as part of this replicative solution you have, is this going to also allow you to apply numerous contacts to the same event, so sales reps don't have to create a single event for each contact?
Yes.
Even though it will.
Yes, so we're working on syncing attendees completely.
You're a god. Thank you.
Let's just take maybe two more questions. I know you had one, and sorry. He's been waiting here, so go ahead. That's right. It picks it up automatically the next time they connect. Right. Oh, thanks. So the question was, what happens if you download the product, install it, connect, download your configuration, and then the administrator makes a change to the configuration? We'll automatically detect that, and the product will start behaving following the new configuration immediately. I think we do it every synchronization.
So my question is about the events
Yes.
and syncing events between Salesforce and Outlook. We use it now to sync client events, like external client events, and we need a way to associate those external client events back to a contact. And so we use the change associations right now. Has there been any updates to that? I don't think you really spoke, I guess, about that. You showed how the calendar would sync to Salesforce, but I guess not actually putting those events or those client meetings into the appropriate kind of either account bucket or contact bucket.
Right. So we talked about some of the association functionality for contacts, and we're looking at how we can do that in a way that makes sense for events. But the idea is that we don't want to build something that makes you go through kind of one by one, goes through the events in the client in Outlook and figure out what it should be connected to in Salesforce. one of the things that we're looking at is perhaps an alternate view of your calendar where you can run through and say, this is for this account, this is for this account, and apply those changes. But today, no, we just synchronize the events, and if you want to associate them, you can go in and associate the appropriate ones.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. We'll give you a few minutes of your day back. Thanks for coming.